Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 48 of All About African Violets. All About African Violets is musically sponsored by Ted Yoder. You can hear and purchase his wonderful music on his website at tedyoder.com. It's also available from iTunes. Welcome, everybody. Come on into my sunroom, have a seat, relax. I'm glad you're here. I'm going without the iPad today. I'm going with paper notes because it's question day. Can you believe it's question day again? Well, we don't have quite as many questions as we did last month, but we've got some great ones. So I'm looking forward to sharing the answers with you because these questions generated great discussion between me and Joyce Stork and Dr. Jeff Smith. So I hope you'll enjoy hearing about them. But before we get to that, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you because on our Facebook page, the All About African Violets page on Facebook, we rolled over 200 likes for the page. And that's just so exciting to me. So thank you very much. It's just awesome. I really love that you keep coming back every week and that you keep sharing the podcast with your friends. Thank you very much. You know, it's been quite a week. I say that every week, but it's been quite a week here in Chicagoland. It was freezing cold again here on Thursday. I was out with my raincoat on, and I wished that I had my down coat on. That's how cold it was. I would say it was in the low 40s again, and the wind chill was brutal. It was so cold. But it seems to be, and it's almost June, but it seems to be warm again, or at least close to being warm. And everything's looking good. You'll see on the look on the stands that some things look a little different, and we can talk about that. But let's go right now into tips and treasures. So I had two questions from Donna. And what she said, the first one, she said, I notice that your Fisherman's Paradise, which is looking lovely, thank you, has variegation that is turning pink in the crown. But I thought that the leaf you originally received was green and white. What causes this in some plants? What can I do to keep the white variegation white? Well, this is a great question, and I thought about it, and I noticed that in my own plants, the ones that are heavily variegated, not the Tommy Lou kind where they're just variegated on the edges, often they will have some pink variegation. So I wrote to Joyce and I said, this is a good question. Yay, Donna. I always understood that variegation is affected by temperature, and I believe that it's also affected by light and fertilizer. I have pretty much always used the same fertilizer, which is Optimara, and I find that a number of my heavily variegated plants, not the Tommy Lou ones, often are pink. I don't know what to do to keep it white or if that's even possible. Any thoughts? And Joyce said, the pink is caused by the red pigment on the underside of the leaf. Generally, this is a genetic trait, although it is usually best expressed when the plant is vigorous. There are no doubt poor cultural conditions that could reduce the expression of the red color, but I would expect that would vary from one cultivar to the next. It might be better to ask Jeff Smith about this. So I asked Jeff Smith, and Jeff said, white variegation that goes to pink is probably a cultural event. I've seen this when plants are stressed by temperature extremes, most often cooler or colder. He says too bright a light source can also cause the plant to produce the red pigment. It might be a little tricky to isolate exactly what is causing this person's plant to go pink, but I suspect that they've changed something in their growing conditions a few months ago and the effects are now showing up. So Donna, have you changed anything? That's something to consider. I personally kind of like that pink look and it never bothers me. And so if a plant begins to develop that, it doesn't ever cause me an issue. But I think that's a really valid question about, if it's supposed to be just cream and white, how do you keep it that way? apparently, both Joyce and Jeff think that it's probably cultural. So it could be fertilizer, it could be water, it could be soil, it could be light, it could be any of those things, temperature. So keep that in mind, and if you've changed anything recently, perhaps change it back. I hope that helps. And Donna's second question, she says, I'm a little confused about removing a layer of leaves, which can sometimes reduce the plant to a size which should possibly be in a smaller pot. I always thought potting down was in order when the diameter of a plant fell below 8 inches or so. And I wrote to Joyce on this too, because I was writing to her about the other, and I said my take on this is that often when you remove a row of leaves, you generally are repotting. But I wouldn't put the plant in a smaller pot. It's sort of like cutting your hair to get it to grow. I feel that removing leaves is an aid to growth, particularly symmetrical growth. And I'm talking about standards here, is what I said to Joyce. And Joyce said, absolutely, removing leaves stimulates growth. Whenever the leaf tissue is broken, that part of the plant releases ethylene gas. Remember, we talked about this months ago about ethylene gas. And the plants react to it by increasing their rate of photosynthesis by as much as 15 to 20%. It is probably a defensive tool against predators feeding on the plant, but it can be put to great use by growers who want plants to grow more efficiently. Removing buds in preparation for the show has a similar effect. This explains why disbudding is usually accompanied by leaves becoming thicker and broader in the process. I can see how your questioner might be confused about potting down. Normally, potting down would occur after the show target date, when a plant will slow down photosynthesis and shift into a more normal rate of growth, or when all the roots were being removed to start the plant over. Potting down after show might be helpful, particularly if the violet had been pushed to grow into a 5-inch or 6-inch pot. But when you are removing leaves on future show plants, it is to perfect the symmetry. There is very little chance the dimensions of the roots are shrinking. If anything, the roots are becoming more crowded, which is perfect because that will act as a stimulus for heavier flowering. And Dr. Jeff weighed in on this one too, and he said, potting down might be done for several reasons. One is to reduce the size of a show plant after show, to start it on a new cycle for a future show. Another is to reduce a plant to 6 inches to stay in the mini category, or to 8 inches to stay in the semi-mini category. Some plants that are described by their hybridizers as one size sometimes grow larger than described, causing problems in classification. Reducing a row of leaves to pot down can keep a plant in size. I hope that helps clear that up for you, Donna. And then, because I was writing to Joyce about these, I had, in our general conversation, mentioned 2 other things. So we ended up having a conversation about fertilizer. I said, I have 3 show hopefuls, and wait until you see what the Open Sesame fertilizer did to Blueberry Sprite. Instead of deep purple with a Geneva edge, I now have purple blossoms with pink tips and an intermittent edge. And I sent her a photo, much like what you guys saw last week in the Look on the Stands. And Joyce said, I don't know enough about chemistry to be able to say for sure, but it seems to me that the Open Sesame has a chemical effect on the plants. I quickly looked at its formulation, and it is more than just the 3 macronutrients. Maybe Jeff Smith could speculate on what the bloom booster is doing to cause color changes and wacky centers. So I wrote to Dr. Jeff Smith, and he said, I Googled Open Sesame and found that it is a 5-45-19 fertilizer. Okay, that's, guys, remember we talked about NPK? So N is 5, P is 45, and K is 19 in Open Sesame fertilizer. The ratio between the nitrogen and the phosphorus, that's the N and the P, is really high, and I could see all kinds of things going wrong with a plant, especially if this fertilizer was used for an extended period of time. Yes, the leaves would probably be stunted, i.e. the center's going crazy because of the low nitrogen, and the flowers would be produced in high numbers, the high phosphorus, which was the point of trying this fertilizer. The flowers would be produced in high numbers, causing distorted growth. I've not seen a Geneva edge plant go to color before, but I suspect this is yet another fertilizer response due to the high phosphorus. The high phosphorus fertilizers should be used very weakly, meaning not strong, and not for long periods of time. Use them just once or twice when the plant is ready to set flowers, and then go back to regular fertilizer. I sometimes think they do more damage than good, as they can be so easy to overuse. Well, this raised more questions for me. So I wrote back to Jeff and I said, do you think that blueberry, I told him that I did only use it for a short period of time in the pre-show schedule where Pauline suggests to use a bloom booster. And I asked him, do you think that Blueberry Sprite will go back to its regular blossom eventually, or do you think it will stay like it is now? And he said, I think there is a good chance it will revert to its original form. A cultural shock, like the fertilizer, shouldn't affect the genetics. And then in parentheses, he says, well, most of the time. And then I asked him, do you think I could take leaves of the affected plants and start over with them, or do you think the new plants would also exhibit the bizarre coloring and wonky centers? I guess the question really is if this is like the micronutrient toxicity I experienced, where if you take a leaf and start over, the new plants exhibit the same problems and have to be tossed anyway. And Jeff said, I would suggest taking a leaf from the older part of the plant that was normal. This should give you a good chance at getting offspring that are true to the original type. Leaves taken from the wonky centers might be normal, but might be wonky. You might have more trouble getting an older leaf to root and produce babies, but I think your odds of getting the normal plant are better. So, it's time for an experiment. I am going to take a leaf. You'll see in the look at what's on the stands, the Blueberry Sprite. I did disbud it. And when I get back from National, I'm going to take a leaf and put a leaf down of the plant. I'm going to continue to grow the plant and see if the existing plant blooms with back to its original description. But I'm also going to put a leaf down and we can watch it as it grows and see what happens. So I did, and I had one other question that I said to Joyce just in our conversations. I had told her I was so excited about Cherry Cola, the one I showed you guys last week. Well, and said how excited I was because I'd wanted to grow it for a long time. It is a Boone plant, and it is from 1981. And let me read you the description of Cherry Cola. Double maroon two-tone star, foliage is pointed, quilted, and it's a standard. It is a registered plant, and it was registered September 24th, 1981. Well, if you remember last week's look on the stand, the blossom you saw was not double. It was two-tone. It's got that purpley color with a reddish kind of overlay. But it was blooming as a single, and I looked it up and my heart just fell. I was like, oh no, it's not blooming true. But then I thought back to, we had a conversation a few weeks ago about semi-doubles and doubles and giving that type of issue another bloom cycle. So I wrote to Joyce and I said, my Cherry Cola is blooming single. I said, I'm going to give it another bloom cycle based on our conversation. And she said, it's possible that Cherry Cola is aging and not strong enough to be as double as it was when it was younger. Another good question for Jeff Smith. So I wrote to Jeff and said, and he said, plants can certainly lose vigor over time. Yes, I would say that this is possible, meaning that it might not ever bloom double again. I've had a few that just kind of faded away no matter what I tried. When doubles lose some of their energy, they do tend to produce more semi-double or single blossoms. And so I asked him, I responded to him and said, I'm going to wait one more bloom cycle and see what happens, because a few more of the blossoms opened between last week and this week, and they were semi-doubles. I said, but if it doesn't bloom double again, then I'm thinking it probably just never will again. Do you agree? And he said, if it continues to bloom single rather than double, it either hasn't the energy or the gene has turned off and isn't being expressed. You could look at the last as being a new sport, but it's probably not an improvement over the original. So those are our questions for this month and this week. I thought all very interesting, and I really enjoyed being able to check with both Joyce and Jeff, and I hope you guys enjoyed the answers to these questions. So guess what? It's time to take a look at what's on the stands. So go take a look, and I'll be right back. Well, here we are in the guest room taking a look at the show hopefuls. Pixie Blue still looking okay, still has buds to open. Should be good to go on Wednesday when I leave. Sarsaparilla just trying to open up. It is still a hopeful, so I'm crossing my fingers. Geisha Girl looking pretty good. Symmetry not ideal, but it's very hopeful. Blueberry Sprite not going anywhere. Oh well. Oh, sorry about that. And here is the Max. Which one is this? I forgot. Max Glacial Grape. Glacial Grape? Yeah. Glacial Grape. And just trying to just shooting up a bud. I don't know. Unless it goes wild in the next couple days. I don't think it's going to go. Here we have Reflections of Spring starting to bloom again. Hang on, let's get over here. And I have to say that I'm very intrigued by this blossom. It's lavender and green. And the new foliage that's coming in is not cupped. This older foliage is a little bit. I'm not sure why. Could have been a temperature issue. This plant was in the basement where it was much cooler. But I'm going to let this one bloom again, and we're going to just take a look and see how it does. Fisherman's Paradise needs a turn. Everybody just had a drink, so they're looking a little limp. I'll let them go maybe a day too long. Here is, all right, guys, we've talked about this before. You can really see how this is leaning this way toward the light. So I'm gonna just turn it. And it's interesting, it looks like there's a little bit of mold on the top of that. I wonder if it got a little too wet for a little too long. Same thing here, it needs a turn. This one I'm often turning, and I think I need to move it into the center of the stand. This is House of Amani. You can see it's dropped a few more blossoms. It's getting ready to bloom. This one had a little trouble growing initially, got some wonky leaves. And again, like many of the other Russians, I've got that haloing going on. This is E.K. Princessa Greza. And let's head back this way. Whoops, sorry, laundry in the hall. And we do have a bloom here on Jean-Pierre Croteau, so I want to let that one go and see how it does. And here's a look from the other side. And just in case you guys are interested, I thought, oh, don't turn that, Annie. This is a shawl that I just finished knitting. And it is here on the floor of my guest room blocking. It's on blocking wires. If you can see them, they're right here. They're wires holding it in place. And the name of this shawl is called Hanami. It's a Japanese style with a basket weave on that end, and then this is supposed to represent cherry blossoms. Anyway, sorry, nothing to do with the plants, but it was in here and I thought you might like to take a look. Let's head down to the basement. Well guys, here we are in the basement and I'm just taking a look at everybody down here. This was the A. John's Winter Sun, and I have to say I'm not going to keep it. These blossoms are very, very interesting, but I really do not like how they look. And I don't think it is going to be a good show plant for me. And that's my main focus, as you guys know. Fisherman's Paradise. This is EK Sky Azure. That's the English translation. About to bloom. I can't wait to see this one. Everybody else, I've got some repotting that I need to do. And this is Buckeye Lost Love. And guys, I did look, I mean, these are huge, gorgeous blossoms. I did look this up, but it's got a green edge, and I don't really know what's up with that. That is not blooming true, and it is not consistent. So here we have no edge, but even on the same blossom, we have green edge up here. So and on this one, same thing. Not here, but here. So I don't know what's going on. I'm going to see if anyone knows if this is a known sport. Quick look at the show plants, and you know, somebody mentioned that they were so surprised that they look so big. Well, these are standards, and they are looking good. This one is Optimara, Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, and it is a good size now. I'm really liking it. The symmetry is really quite nice. And the next time I can take a standard to show, I think this would be a great one to take because it is looking good. Even Western Moon is looking a little larger than usual. So, you know, it takes time. We've been at this now for what? Almost a year. And, excuse me, just giving Ma's Old Fashioned a turn and knocking over Willowa. There we go. See, everybody needs a turn. And if we think back a year, Western Moon is one of the plants that I got initially and had this one standard from the beginning. So interestingly enough, it has not grown at the same rate as this Optimara, Michigan, which started as a leaf throughout the year. And this could just be how it's genetic makeup. It just doesn't get as large as, say, this one. And I did ask Meredith Hall, she's the hybridizer of Western Moon, about it, and she did say that it never got very large for her. So I just think it's so interesting. Someone asked me about Traveling Man. Here it is. They thought their blossoms looked a little wonky. I thought the blossoms looked wonky on this one too when it first bloomed, but it seems to be how they bloom, almost a wasp-like blossom. Let's go take a look at the Streptocarpus shelf. Well, here's Blue Mars, and you guys, do you see why I'm not too happy with Moonlit Velvet upstairs? Here are two blossoms open on a stalk, and they don't drop off and they don't fall over like they do upstairs. So, you know, you just keep growing, just keep trying new things. Here's Dale's Polar Berry. It just gave it up this week. I need to cut that off. Here's Dancing Trail, needs a drink. Heartland's White Gold, Salmon Sunset, Midnight Flame. And here's Chiffon Masquerade. Guys, it's growing. It's looking good. I'm very excited about it. Whew, crossing my fingers. Let's go up and take a look upstairs. Here's a short stop to take a look at the Petrocosmia carrii. It's looking pretty good. It's got a couple leaves that need to probably come off, but that might give me the chance to try to propagate it. So we'll see. And right here we go. You may notice that this shelf does not look quite so crowded. I did some cleanup here. And I also did some culling. Some things are going away or went away, because it's time to really start thinking, because I'm going to National this week. And guys, you know what? You kind of know that I'm probably going to come home with some new stuff, don't you? So, things that have been fussy, things that maybe just not growing as well as they might, don't seem to be as happy here as they might be, they have gone to their great reward. Now, this is Cherry Cola. I did disbud it. To my dismay, Cherry Cola is supposed to be a double. And you'll recall the one when you saw it last week, it was not a double, it was a single. Now, based on the information I got from Joyce, because someone else asked a question about this, I am going to give Cherry Cola another bloom cycle, because when a few more blossoms opened and they were semi-double. But as you heard earlier, I think I shared this already, this just may not, this plant might be done. It's a very old vintage variety, and it just may not have the strength anymore to really bloom as a double, but we'll give it another shot and we'll see. Here's my sassy sister that's really Irish Flirt. Quite frankly, it's blooming pretty well. Wonder if I should take it this week. Maybe on Wednesday. Maybe it should go with me to National. I don't know. Here we are. Here's Moonlit Velvet. Not that keen on it right now, as you know, and I do have some cleanup to do on it as well. But here's something I've been hoping to show you. This is Texas Hot Chili, and it is a stunner. This is the first Streptocarpus that I saw that made me want to grow these plants. This one needs some cleanup. I was just sort of letting it go for a little while longer. It's one of Dale Martin's. It's probably one of her most famous, Texas Hot Chili. And man, I love it. And here are the Petrocosmias. We already saw those. The Calumnias. Again, everything going pretty well here. Let's go take a look at the big box violet. Well, it's early in the day here in Chicagoland on Saturday morning, and it is a very gloomy day. But here is a beautiful piece of sunshine in my sunroom. I swear, these blossoms don't even look, this looks like a hydrangea, doesn't it? With this huge, beautiful head of pink blossom. But it is real, and it is a violet. It's not a hydrangea. And I'm going to give it a little turn here. And the blossoms are starting to fade. There's a couple. There's one right there ready to go. This one's starting to fade as well. But what a beautiful piece of joy to have in my sunroom. Well, guys, that's the look at what's on the stands this week. I'll be right back. So what did you think? You saw some different things. You saw Blueberry Sprite with all the blossoms removed. I would have left them, but they were already fading. They were well past any looking good at all in any possible way. So I disbudded, and I will, as I said before, I will take a leaf, I'll put one down, and we'll see what happens. And I will also take a leaf of sarsaparilla. I will probably, if it goes with me later this week, if it goes to National, I probably will only keep a leaf from it and start that one over, and we'll see what happens. You also noticed probably on that shelf and also on some other shelves that things don't look quite so crowded. Well, as you know, I grow for show, and things that don't really seem to me like I think they're going to have good show potential, I generally will not keep them. And it was time to do a little bit of culling, and so I did that, because you also know, and as you heard me say, I'm going to National. Probably going to come home with some stuff. It's just how it works. So I needed to make a little space. So we'll see what happens. And I hope you didn't mind seeing my shawl. It's a stole, actually, it's called, but it's a shawl. You wrap it around your shoulders. It's called the Hanami shawl, or stole. And I actually made it as a gift for my cousin's daughter for her wedding that will be happening this fall. And she doesn't know about it, but she doesn't watch the podcast, so I think I can safely tell you guys. I enjoyed knitting it. It was very, very different. It's both sides are different. One side is a basket weave, as I mentioned, and it's a Japanese style of shawl, that the Japanese basket weave pattern, and then the other side is supposed to represent the falling of the cherry blossom petals from the trees. And it was very interesting to knit, and it looks black, I think, on the film, but it's actually a beautiful, rich, variegated, lightly variegated blue, deep turquoise almost, and teal blue. So I hope you enjoyed seeing that. I know some of you are knitters, and I thought you might like to see it since it was laying there blocking. It was my first time using blocking wires. Holy smokes, it was crazy. I missed my train that day. Anyway, it's time to get the bail money ready. Well, really, all I can talk about this week is National. That really is all I can talk about, because I am so excited. I just want to remind you that I am going to be speaking at the Affiliates Breakfast, just probably, not very long, a few minutes. I was invited to come and participate in that meeting, and so I said I would do that and talk a little bit about the podcast. So I'm looking forward to it. And I am so looking forward to meeting as many of you as I can next week when we're there in Austin. Please come up to me and introduce yourself, because you see me every week, but I don't see you, so I might not recognize you, but I really want to meet you. So please come and say hello, and I will be looking forward to that very, very much. Now, a couple things I want to share with you, because it is time now to keep moving forward. And as I mentioned, I'm going to National. How many times can I say that in this podcast? So I will do my very best to have a podcast for you early on Sunday morning. I will try. I really will try. If things, sometimes when I'm traveling, it's not always as easy as I might like it to be able to upload and get the time to do what I need to do to get the podcast ready, but I'm going to do my best. But if it's not up on Sunday morning, be a little patient with me, okay? Because I'll be home Sunday later in the day, and I'll do it then if I haven't been able to do it in the morning. And to celebrate, this is week 48, so we're within about a month of the beginning of the podcast, of when I first started a year ago. I can hardly believe it's almost a year. And I received an email this week from a woman named Charmaine, who is a viewer of the podcast, and she and her husband have a business called Beautiful Views, and they make lucite, clear lucite hanging shelves, and I will link to it in the show notes for you, that you can hang in a window and add shelf space. They're really very, very cool. And they gifted me one as a year, as a celebration of the first year of the podcast. And what's even more wonderful is that they have donated a set of these shelves. It's like 4 shelves. They've donated a set for me to have a drawing to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. I'm going to have a few other things as well in the drawing. The shelves, I must tell you, can only be shipped in the United States. But there will be other things that I'll be able to ship internationally. So There'll be more about that in the next month, when we're very close to being a 1 year anniversary. I can't believe it's a year, but I just wanted to tell you about the shelves. They are really gorgeous, and again, I will link to them in the show notes for you. And I want to make sure I don't forget anything. I think that's everything I wanted to tell you. So it's time to keep moving forward. Thank you for being here with me this week when I'm just practically dancing in my chair. I'm so excited to go to National. And I hope that I will be able to film as much as possible and share as much of the excitement and the energy of National with you as I can. That's my plan. And I'm also hoping to do some interviews, get some folks to sit down with me. This is a time, National, there are people that you only get to see once a year, and usually it's at National. So this will be an exciting and wonderful week, and I will see you next week. I hope that your days are filled with all the things you love. Good growing. I'll see you next time.